Welcome back to the Patti and Brian podcast.
I'm Patti, the better half of this operation. I'm also the one who hands out snacks on our road trips.
She's not wrong about the snacks. Let me give you the State of the Union here. We are a couple from Ohio who have made it our destiny to visit as many presidential homes, museums, and libraries we can find. And we've been on quite the campaign trail. Now, before we dive into today's inaugural address about presidential museums, I need to address a member of our cabinet who is not happy about these trips. Our precocious little puggle, Bellarella.
Oh, Bellarella. She acts like we abandoning her for 77 years every time we go to the grocery store. Can you imagine what she thinks when we actually take a road trip?
The separation anxiety is real, folks. We've considered making her Secretary of Snacks, but she'd eat the entire budget in one sitting.
And also that she is terrified to get into a car.
Now here's something you might not know. Ohio is the mother of presidents. Ohio has produced more presidents than any other state, 8 of them to be exact.
Which means you have plenty of opportunities to take me to historic sites without leaving our home state, honey.
And I was actually born in Marion, Ohio, the same city as President Warren G. Harding, our 29th president. So, presidential museums and homes, they're in my blood.
Brian went to Harding High School. He's visited the Harding home more times than Harding's ancestors. He collects Harding memorabilia. If there was a Harding fan club, Brian would be president.
Well, this episode is all about presidents, and that's exactly where we're going to start today's journey, right in my hometown of Marion, with the man, the myth, the unfortunately scandalized Warren G. Harding.
Buckle up, history lovers. We're about to take you on a tour of presidential proportions.
All right, let's talk about the most famous front porch in American history. The front porch of the Warren G. Harding home in Marion, Ohio, where he conducted his legendary 1920 front porch campaign.
When Brian says he stood on that porch more times than he can count, he means it. We've taken pictures on that porch from every angle.
And picture this, it's 1920, and instead of traveling around the country for his presidential campaign, Harding brings the campaign to his front porch. People come from all over, 600,000 visitors during the campaign, to hear him speak right there in Marion.
It's a really charming home. The Harding home is a restored National Historic Landmark, and they've kept many of the original furnishings that belong to Warren and Florence Harding.
And here's what impressed Patti and me. The newly constructed Harding Presidential Library and Museum is absolutely stunning. We walked in expecting, some dusty old building, and instead,
it is gorgeous. State-of-the-art exhibits, beautiful displays about Warren and Florence's lives. I was genuinely shocked by how well done it was.
Now, just about a mile and a half away from their home is the Harding Memorial. And folks, this is where the story gets really interesting. After Harding died in office in 1923, and Florence passed away just 15 months later from chronic kidney disease, Marion wanted to honor them properly.
My favorite part is about the children of Marion. Kids from all over the city saved their pennies, nickels, and dimes to help fund the construction of the memorial.
Can you imagine little kids emptying their piggy banks because they wanted to honor their hometown president?
That's actually really sweet. It says something about how the community felt about him.
It does. And here's something not everyone knows. Harding was originally buried in a plot at Marion Cemetery, and it was actually guarded by armed soldiers until the memorial was completed. They took it that seriously.
Armed soldiers for a cemetery plot? Marion must have known about the plot to steal Lincoln's body.
The memorial dedication was in 1931, and President Calvin Coolidge was one of the speakers.
And contrary to popular belief, you did not attend that dedication.
No, but I have been to that memorial more times than I can count. Growing up in Marion, it was just part of life. I went to Harding High School. We've done history tours throughout every street in Marion. The city really embraces the Harding name.
Marion is very proud of their presidential connection.
And standing on that front porch, the most famous front porch in history, you think about all those people who came to hear him speak, all that energy and excitement. The front porch campaign was brilliant, really. Instead of exhausting himself traveling, he made people come to him. It was unprecedented.
Okay, but we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the scandal in the cabinet.
Yeah, we do. Look, here's the thing about Warren G. Harding. He's often ranked as one of the worst presidents in American history. But I genuinely believe that that's not entirely fair. His biggest problem was that he didn't choose his friends well.
That's putting it mildly.
His cronies absolutely ruined him. He appointed people to positions of power who had no business being there, and they took advantage. The Teapot Dome scandal is the most famous example.
But Harding himself wasn't involved in the corruption.
That's the thing. There's no evidence he personally profited or was directly involved. He just made terrible choices about who to trust. He was loyal to his friends, and they stabbed him in the back. If you look at what Harding actually accomplished, forming the Veterans Bureau, creating the Bureau of the Budget, slicing the deficit by 25% in just 2 years, putting race issues on the national agenda, hosting the world's first peace conference, he did some genuinely good things.
He just had terrible taste in friends.
Yep. He served only 29 months in the White House before he died, and he died a popular president. It was only after his death that all the scandals came to light. I collect Harding memorabilia, and I've always felt like he deserves a more positive view of his presidency.
This is why I married a history buff. You defend presidents who've been dead for a century.
Someone has to. But visiting the Harding home and museum, it's a complete picture of Harding, the good and the bad. They don't shy away from the scandals, but they also show who he really was. He bought the Marion Daily Star newspaper in 1882 with 2 friends, then bought them out and made it profitable. He served in the Ohio General Assembly, became lieutenant governor, and went back to the newspaper. Lost a bid for governor, then got elected to the United States Senate in 1914.
And then the front porch campaign in 1920.
Right. He ran against Ohio Governor James Cox, fellow newspaperman, and won easily. Over 60% of the popular vote, 404 electoral votes. He became the first president elected after women got the right to vote in national elections.
That means he got the ladies' vote.
The Harding Home and Library do an excellent job of presenting all of it. The triumphs, the tragedies, and the scandals.
And I have to drag you out of the gift shop before you buy everything.
Okay, let's shift gears and head south to Virginia because we need to talk about one of the most surprising visits we've ever made. Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home.
Surprising is one word for it. Nearly turned the car around is another phrase that comes to mind.
We were in Virginia with our son Marcus and my dad, and we decided almost as an afterthought to visit Monticello. We're driving along, following the signs, and suddenly we're going up this mountain.
and up and up and up.
The road just kept climbing. We're winding around this mountain, and I'm thinking, did we take a wrong turn? Are we supposed to be driving up a 850-foot peak?
I looked at Brian and said, if Thomas Jefferson carried groceries up this mountain, he deserved to be on the nickel.
Monticello sits on the summit of a 850-foot high peak in the southwest mountains. Monticello actually means little mountain in Italian,
which is either ironic or Jefferson has a sense of humor.
But when we finally got to the top and saw the house, it was absolutely breathtaking. Thomas Jefferson, founding father, author of the Declaration of Independence, third President of the United States, designed this entire estate.
The gardens were beautiful, and so was the view from the mountain.
Jefferson was buried on the grounds in what is now Monticello Cemetery, which is owned by a society of his descendants. After Jefferson died at Monticello in 1826, his daughter Martha Jefferson Randolph sold Monticello for $7,500.
$7,500. Wow.
I know. In 1834, it was bought by Uriah P. Levy, a Commodore in the U.S. Navy, for just $2,500. Levy spent significant funds to preserve the property and save it from ruin. His nephew, Jefferson Monroe Levy, took over in 1879 and also invested considerable funds to restore and preserve it.
Thank goodness for the Levies.
I know, right? In 1923, Monroe Levy sold it for $500,000. That's about $7.15 million in today's money, to the Thomas Jefferson Foundation. That's who runs it today. Jefferson left Monticello in 1784 to serve as minister of France after his wife died in 1782. He spent years in Europe. He saw classical buildings he'd only read about. That's when he decided to extensively remodel and rebuild his home.
He was basically like, I've seen Paris, now I need to upgrade.
Pretty much. In 1794, after serving as the first U.S. Secretary of State, he began rebuilding based on ideas he acquired in Europe. Jefferson kept working on Monticello until his death in 1826. That was 200 years ago.
The man was never satisfied, just like you, honey.
But here's the sad part. Before Jefferson died, Monticello had begun to show signs of disrepair. His university project in Charlottesville demanded his attention. He had family problems, and most importantly, he was accumulating massive debts. In the last few years of his life, much went without repair.
A man visited Jefferson before he died. What was his name?
Samuel Whitcomb, Jr. He visited in 1824 and said the house was, quote, rather old and going to decay.
That's so sad. This brilliant man, his incredible home, and he couldn't afford to maintain it at the end of his life.
We're so glad we made the trip, despite almost turning back because of that mountain drive. Monticello ended up being one of our favorite presidential sites. The restoration is incredible. The history is fascinating, and standing in the rooms where Jefferson lived and worked, it's very powerful.
Plus, the gift shop had excellent Virginia peanuts.
That is why you're the chief snack dispenser. All right, we need to talk about the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum in Springfield, Illinois, because, folks, this is not your grandfather's presidential museum.
This is living history, not dusty old books and clothes in glass cases.
Exactly. The Lincoln Library uses state-of-the-art technology in ways that absolutely blew my mind. We're talking high-tech theatrical presentations, life-size dioramas of Lincoln's life, and, this was my favorite part, hologram presentations.
Brian stood in front of that hologram, thinking Lincoln had come back to life.
Because it was incredible. They used this technology to bring historical figures to life, to make you feel like you're actually there during these pivotal moments in history. It's not just reading about the past, it's an experience.
I love the wax figures. They were so lifelike and detailed, especially the John Wilkes Booth figure. And the Mary Lincoln dress display were intriguing. They had her actual gowns, and you could see the craftsmanship.
They have original drafts of the Gettysburg Address and the Emancipation Proclamation. You're standing there looking at Lincoln's actual handwriting, his edits, his thought process.
You're looking at documents that changed the course of history.
The library itself holds over 12 million items. 12 million. Researchers come from all over the world to access these materials.
That's almost as many papers that you have in your office, honey. The museum is designed for regular people, families, kids.
That is what sets it apart. The museum shows Lincoln as a young man, as a lawyer, as a father, as president during the Civil War. You see his humanity and not just his mythology.
We also visited the Lincoln home, which is the only house Abraham Lincoln ever owned.
Right. It's preserved within a 4-block historic neighborhood managed by the National Park Service. They've restored the entire neighborhood to look like it did when Lincoln lived there in the 1850s and 60s. You walk down those streets and it's like stepping back in time.
You can see where the Lincoln family lived, where their children played, where Abraham prepared for his debates and political careers.
The National Park Service does an excellent job with the tours.
The house wasn't a mansion or a grand estate. It was a comfortable home where a family lived their lives.
And that's the part of Lincoln's appeal. He came from humble beginnings, educated himself, worked his way up through law and politics. He was a self-made man in the truest sense.
Seeing that night at Ford's Theater, understanding what happened, it hits you.
It does. And that's what great museums do. They make you feel something. They connect you emotionally to history. The Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum does that better than almost any museum we've visited.
That is what presidential museums should aspire to be.
Let's head back to Ohio now and talk about William McKinley, our 25th president, and the impressive memorial in Canton.
This is where Brian and his brothers have their bonding time.
My brothers Kyle and Jeff and I have visited the McKinley Monument in Canton, Ohio, many times over the years. There's something about climbing those steps up to the memorial. It's this massive, beautiful structure that dominates the Canton skyline.
I've been to Canton with Brian, but I have never walked up those steps to the memorial.
We need to fix that. The McKinley National Memorial is stunning. It sits on a hill and you climb all these steps to reach it. When you get to the top, you can see for miles.
I'll take your word for it. I was busy looking at the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
They're pretty close to each other. William McKinley was born in 1843 in Niles, Ohio. He served in the Civil War, became a lawyer, then a prosecuting attorney. He was elected to Congress, served as Ohio's governor, and then won the presidency in 1896.
Another Ohio president.
McKinley built his entire career in Canton. That's where he practiced law and where he lived. The William McKinley Presidential Library and Museum is located right at the foot of the memorial.
The museum contains the largest collection of McKinley artifacts in the world.
They chronicle his entire life. In 1901, he was shot by an anarchist at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo. He died 8 days later from gangrene.
That's terrible.
McKinley was actually quite popular, and he had just been re-elected. His death shocked the nation. The museum has exhibits about his assassination, about Theodore Roosevelt becoming president after McKinley's death, and about the construction of the memorial.
Didn't something happen to McKinley's Canton home?
Yes, the McKinley's home was destroyed by fire in 1937. It's a real loss because that home was where he conducted his own version of a front porch campaign in 1896.
So, the front porch campaign was a thing before Harding?
Yep, McKinley actually did it first. He stayed home in Canton and had people come to him. Harding borrowed the strategy in 1920. Ohio minds think alike, I guess.
Or lazy minds. Come to me, I'm not going to you.
It was actually brilliant strategy, but here's my honest assessment of the McKinley Museum. I wasn't as impressed with it as I've been with others.
It does need an upgrade.
It seems antiquated compared to some of the more modern museums we visited. It needs updating, better exhibits, and more interactive elements. The Lincoln Museum set a high bar, and the McKinley Museum just feels dated in comparison.
Maybe the museum will hear this podcast and get some ideas.
I can't even get my family to listen to my podcast. But seriously, if you're in Canton visiting the Pro Football Hall of Fame, stop by the McKinley Memorial, climb those steps, pay your respects to a president who accomplished a lot in his time, and appreciate the history.
And then go shopping while Brian climbs the steps again.
Okay, now we're getting to one of our absolute favorite presidential sites, the Rutherford B. Hayes Presidential Library and Museum in Fremont, Ohio.
This one is special to us because of the memories. We went there for years.
The key is went there. This was a family tradition. Every October, on the anniversary of Hayes' birthday, they used to hold a Civil War reenactment on the grounds of Spiegel Grove, Hayes' estate.
We would get up early, make the 2-hour drive from our house, and arrive just as the reenactors were setting up.
It was incredible. We would walk through Spiegel Grove, this beautiful estate with massive tall trees. The morning air was crisp, and then you start to take in the sights and smells and sounds. Wood smoke from the campfires.
Cedar and wood smoke mixing together.
The smoke would waft through those tall trees, creating this atmospheric haze. There were white canvas tents set up all over the huge yard. Union soldiers on one side, Confederate reenactors on the other.
The reenactors had authentic uniforms, equipment, everything. They had pots cooking over open fires, authentic period food, the whole experience.
And then the battle would start. You'd hear the booming of the cannons. The sound would roll through the trees, and you'd see the smoke from the cannon fire. It was like stepping back in time to the 1860s.
We brought our sons Marcus and Keith, our nephew Nick, and Brian's dad. It became this multi-generational tradition.
It was one of my favorite things we did as a family. The kids loved it. Cannons and soldiers and camping. And my dad, even he seemed to enjoy it.
And then they stopped doing it.
Yeah, a few years ago, they discontinued the Civil War reenactment, and we are so disappointed about that. I don't know why they stopped. Maybe funding, maybe logistics, but it was such a special event.
It was our October tradition.
But even without the reenactment, Spiegel Grove is an incredible place to visit. The Hayes Presidential Library and Museum is the site of the nation's first presidential library.
Yes, the first, before FDR, JFK, Lincoln, or Jefferson. Before any of the modern presidential libraries, Hayes family created this one first.
The museum was started by Hayes' son, Colonel Webb Cook Hayes, shortly after the turn of the 20th century. They deeded the president's estate, Spiegel Grove, and all its holdings to the state of Ohio. Ground was broken in 1912, and the first presidential library and museum in the United States opened on May 30th, 1916.
So when people talk about presidential libraries, this is where it all started.
Yep. 19,000 artifacts. They illustrate the life and times of Rutherford B. Hayes and Ohio history. There's also a weapons collection that's really impressive.
The Hayes home is beautiful. It's a National Historic Landmark, restored to look like it did during the president's lifetime.
And here's something interesting. President Hayes and First Lady Lucy Webb Hayes are buried right there on the estate, within steps of the home and museum.
We always visit their grave sites when we're there. It's peaceful and beautiful.
It is. Rutherford B. Hayes was our 19th president, and he was elected without winning the majority of the popular vote. It was one of the most controversial elections in American history, the election of 1876.
Another Ohio president. We really do have a monopoly, and his wife Lucy Hayes wasn't just standing in the background.
No, she was actively involved in social causes. She was nicknamed Lemonade Lucy because she wouldn't serve alcohol in the White House.
I really do miss Civil War reenactments.
Me too. Those booming cannons, the smell of the fires, the white tents against the backdrop of those beautiful trees, the smoke drifting through the morning air. It was magical. All right, we need to talk about the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston because this one is deeply personal to me.
This is one of your obsessions, honey.
I spent a lifetime studying and searching about the life and death of President Kennedy. One of my very first memories as a child is from November 22nd, 1963.
That memory stayed with you.
It did. It shaped my entire interest in history and in presidents. I became fascinated with Kennedy, with Camelot, and with the tragedy in Dallas.
So, when we planned our trip to Boston in 1999, visiting the JFK Presidential Library wasn't optional. It was the whole reason for the trip. But we didn't love the drive through Boston.
Boston traffic is no joke, or maybe it is a joke. But once we got there, once we saw the library, it was worth every minute of that stressful drive.
The JFK Library is a modern building that overlooks Boston Harbor. The location is perfect. You can see the water, the Boston skyline, and feels very Kennedy.
My dad came with us on this trip, which was an adventure in itself. Dad in Boston traffic, that's a whole other podcast episode. But having him there was special. He remembered Kennedy's presidency and remembered where he was when Kennedy was shot.
We started the museum tour with a short film that sets the stage, and then you are on your own to explore.
The exhibits and displays are incredible. The Kennedy-Nixon debates. There's a whole section on the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was probably the closest the world has come to nuclear war.
They also have extensive exhibits on the space program, Kennedy's famous speech about going to the moon, and I love the exhibits about Jacqueline Kennedy, the fashion, the style, the culture impact she had.
And there's the 1960s campaign paraphernalia. Buttons, posters, signs that really capture the energy of that time.
The whole museum feels alive. It's not stuffy or boring.
That's exactly it. I stood in that museum looking at Kennedy's desk, reading his words, watching footage of his speeches, and I felt connected to that moment in history.
It's a powerful place. Even if you're not a Kennedy obsessive like Brian, it's worth visiting.
The building overlooks the water, and there's this sense of looking forward, looking outward, which I think JFK would have appreciated.
Plus, the gift shop had excellent Kennedy memorabilia.
I may have bought a few things.
You bought a lot of things.
In my defense, it was the JFK Presidential Library.
You collect JFK memorabilia like you are creating your own JFK library, honey.
Fair point. But seriously, if you're a history buff, if you want to understand Kennedy's impact on American culture and politics, you have to visit this library.
Just prepare yourself for Boston traffic.
So, we've covered a lot of ground today. Harding, Jefferson, Lincoln, McKinley, Hayes, Kennedy. But there are still a few presidential homes and libraries we haven't visited yet.
We have a list.
Yes, we do. We haven't been to the Ulysses S. Grant Home and Museum yet. We haven't visited the Taft Home or the Garfield Home and Library. And all of these are definitely on our radar.
They're all in Ohio, too. We could do a presidential tour of Ohio and hit all of them.
Right. We don't have to travel far. Grant's home is in southern Ohio. Taft is in Cincinnati. Garfield is in Mentor.
Except we have a problem.
Yes, little Bellarella.
Our precious little pug Tato, who acts like we are abandoning her forever every time we leave the house.
She gets upset when we go to the grocery store. Can you imagine what she thinks when we actually take a road trip?
She gives us those sad, betraying, how could you leave me looks.
It's heartbreaking. We've considered bringing her along, but she won't ride in the car either.
Anxiety overdrive.
So our trips are sort of on hold for now.
Our little girl is our chief of staff.
Okay, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Patti and Brian podcast. We've taken you on a journey through presidential homes and museums, from Harding's front porch in Marion to Jefferson's mountaintop estate, from Lincoln's state-of-the-art museum to Kennedy's waterfront library.
We've climbed memorial steps, walked through historic neighborhoods, smelled the wood smoke of Civil War reenactments, and learned about the lives of men who shaped our nation.
And we've done it all together with snacks and laughter and a shared love of history.
Don't forget Bellarella, who's probably wondering where we are right now.
Thank you all for joining us on this inaugural episode. We hope you've enjoyed learning about these incredible presidential sites as much as we've enjoyed visiting them.
And I'm going to hold my little girl until she falls asleep, snug as a pug in a rug.
And I'll be looking for our next road trip adventure.
As long as Bellarella approves. Thanks for listening to the Patti and Brian podcast, everyone.